Today we're going to look at the latest footage from this Indian moon landing charade. But first, before we do that, we're going to have a little peep at one of the mainstream medias in India and see what they've got to say about India's achievements thus far on the moon. What do you got to say, lads? Oh, right. It would seem we're getting a bit of honesty here from one of the mainstream media outlets in India, as they're telling us here, India scripted history. Now, I do appreciate that bit of honesty, guys. But here's a little tip here. When you see grown adults sat round in large numbers, working themselves up into a frenzy, clapping over cartoons, instinctively you kind of know something's up. But I do appreciate the honesty all the same. And then amongst all of this charade, one man stood up and was counted. This man now will forever be known as the king of the cartoons, as this man is responsible for getting a cartoon to land on a CGI moon. What a boy! Off the back of that cartoon fest that we all witnessed the other day, and off the back of the clip we've just seen where one of the mainstream media outlets in India are classing their achievements in space as scripted, off the back of those things we get to entertain this clip from India. This is supposed to convince us that that cartoon really did land on the moon. Honest. Look. As you can see, I've forwarded this to nearly the end. This is so unpleasant on the eye. It's unbelievable. You would have thought 50 plus years later, from the so-called original moon landing, with 50 plus years of advancements in camera technology, you would have thought this footage would be far superior. But no, it's almost like it's 50 years worse than the original so-called moon landing. And this is supposed to convince us that that cartoon really did land on the moon. Awful tosh. I hope no one had an epileptic fit watching that nonsense. So we've got two clips to finish off of the lunar rover. First one as it descends onto the lunar surface. We get to see it come down the ramp here. And one thing I pretty much noticed straight away is the design. You just pause it there, and the fact is quite a low wheelbase there. And another thing I noticed in relation to that design is that big crater that's a couple of, 3-4 meters out from the ramp that it would appear this lunar rover is going to have to encounter. So I can't wait to see how this lunar rover deals with that giant crater, particularly given the fact it's got a low wheelbase. Can't wait. Here we go, approaching the big crater. Will they avoid it, or will they test this technology straight off the ramp? Oh, interesting that they cut it there, just before their lunar rover encountered its first obstacle. What do we get? Oh, they just zoom in on it. So they definitely cut it there as the rover gets to the big crater. I wonder why they cut it there. You would have thought that'd make great footage, showing their technology being tested straight off the ramp and overcoming that crater. Do not fear, space fans. They've got you covered. The latest clip now from the lunar rover. We're going to see it encounter that crater. This should be incredible. Oh. So you're not showing us your lunar lander overcome that crater? Bit strange, isn't it? I would have thought that would have made incredible viewing. In fact, when we zoom in on this area, particularly where you cut from the last shot, and we look at the tracks and the area in between the tracks, and then we look at the area to the right, it would appear there's been a bit of a clean-up job there. And the fact you didn't show us your lunar rover overcome that crater tells me your rover prop got stuck there on your stage. And as a result, you had to get someone to pull it out of the makeshift crater. And because they did that, you had to hide the footprints and do a bit of a clean-up job in that said area. That can be the only conclusion I can come to. Otherwise, it would have been India's pleasure to show us their low base rover overcome its first hurdle almost straight off the ramp. But no, we cut before the crater and after. And after the cut, like I said, looks like there's been a clean-up job. Anyway, where's this rover going? So is that it? It just drives off at a camera shot, and that is the end of this silly charade? Surely not. Surely not. I find this area, let me just come back actually. I find that area there incredibly damning. To me, that looks like a stage set where they've had to clear up the footprints of someone who had to come and rescue their rover because he got stuck in their artificial crater here, trying to convince cartoon fantasists that this silliness is taking place on the moon. Just like the India mainstream media said, scripted. I'm going to add to that. Scripted tosh.